Hey folks, it's me again. I want to play with a project. I've been, I think, doing a lot of stuff on the maxim-engine side, and that's kind of toning down as I kind of reach that kind of critical point with it. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit today because I was playing with something cool, and I'm trying to. Well, as with so many things open source, I don't, if you're someone that's getting started in this as a career, know that once you've been doing this for 10 or 20 years, you're still going to stand around scratching your head at trying to do something. I always get into this. This is, let me pop this up. I've been playing it with Hasura. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. But I really love the idea of this thing. So this is a thin layer on top of Postgres, and Postgres is a database, and it's plugged in nice and deeply into Postgres, and it implements GraphQL on the data schema you have in your database. And you know, so many projects that I've started in my past have been largely like CRUD applications, like create, read, update, delete, that are just a front end to a back end database. And it always feels weird building out those API layers because it feels so repetitive once you've done it so many times. And I've been watching GraphQL, and I've been experimenting with it on a couple of personal projects, but mostly like through either Phoenix or through, and that's Phoenix on Elixir and Erlang VM, and the other side is a little bit on Rails. And you know, the Phoenix is really nice, lightweight, super fast. But another layer of tech that is intended to be, you know, a general purpose web application or API programming environment. And this doesn't pretend to be anything more than that simple GraphQL layer on top of the database. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to re-implement, because, you know, obviously I need the practice. I've only done it once. Re-implement a local setup. So I'm going to be using Hasura, I'm going to be using Postgres, I'm going to be using Docker, and I'm going to kind of spin up one of their example applications and just show you what that does. So my goal here is not too long a stream, and to kind of go from zero to a running playground with this thing, so you can kind of kick around and play with it yourself. Or next week when I forget how to do it, I can watch the video and remember. This is really just all a self-serving enterprise on my part. I to help me with my failing memory. Okay, so this is the main webpage for Hasura, and the you know, it's an open source project. It's a commercial open source project, so it's open source kind of GPL-like license, and then on the commercial side, you can buy a commercial license for it. So it's pretty friendly with a lot of the stuff that I would get into. And because it's not an application platform, I don't intend to ever modify it, and so I'm not going to get kind of trapped into that kind of the contagious nature of the GPL license, if you will. So, not that I wouldn't necessarily, if I were doing open source things, I would happily open them up. But one of the projects I want to use it on is a closed source commercial product, and I got a lot of boilerplate Rails code that's it's like your classic REST API or resourceful API, really. And that's where I was experimenting with the GraphQL gateway. So it's like, hey, I can deprecate, 95% of this API if I had another way to do this. So here we are. So on the GitHub page, when you click through to it, it's got the main repository, which has the example projects in it. And, that's in this community folder. And there's some examples. And I'm just gonna zoom in on one of them. The one that I did the other day, sorry if I actually click, is this real-time poll. And for me, this is really one of the main reasons why I want to explore on the GraphQL side. Never mind that it cleans up a lot of the boilerplate in REST APIs. It also has this notion of subscriptions that uses WebSockets and is more of a data push model for event propagation or data propagation, which, again, because it's this super thin layer plugged deep into Postgres, is really, really efficient, it seems. So, yeah, we're going to light up the real-time poll. And the real-time poll just uses the Apollo GraphQL client on the JavaScript side. Oh, actually, I can open up the package.json and show you. So it uses Apollo. It uses React for the UI side of it, and React Google Charts to do a little bit of drawing. And it's a live polling application. It's really simple. So I'm gonna step back, and I'm gonna clone this repo. Let me pull that out over here. It's got a couple of things in it. Let me just move my windows around over here because I'm gonna pull up a quick reference as well. Try to remember the specific things. As with so many things, I go and I explore and I play, and then I try to distill it down to what are the two things I did to this bare bones repo, or this, as is repo, in order to accomplish what I was hoping to. And I've got this down to a nice succinct set of changes. So in the GraphQL engine, I was really just doing these things right in. I didn't really check out the GraphQL engine to actually use the source of it here. I'm going to use a Docker image where it's already set up and ready to use. In fact, if this goes quick, then maybe I'll see if I can swap in the Linux Alpine based distribution of it just to get a super thin, kind of production optimized Docker image in play, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So, okay, real-time poll. Oops, that's chatting. And so you can see here they set you up with a Docker file that's, it's intended to stage the polling application itself. And one of the things that I thought was a bit weird is they ask the the node server that basically serves up the React JavaScript application, and they boot that up on port 8080, which is also the default port that the GraphQL engine is going to want to boot up on. It's the default port used by their Docker image. And the Docker image, I just pop over to the hub and I look to this is the core Docker Hub project page. It's really straightforward. I don't know that they even really talk about the tags. I'm looking for Yeah, they don't document the tag there. I'm just going to put latest. It's a pretty small image too, so that's not too bad. This thing is crazy lightweight on resources. If you look at the home page, I think it outlines it here. It uses something like 50 megabytes of memory, and yeah, 50 megabytes of memory, 50 megs for the Docker image size. Super slim. Love this about it. Love this about it. Don't have to boot up a big Rails instance and eat half a gig of RAM and stuff like that. A lot of hope for it. We'll see how it does for me. Okay, so that is the Docker image for the GraphQL engine on Docker Hub. And then I wanna, because it's tied to Postgres, my favorite thing for Postgres these days, for a while now, is to use the Docker image for Postgres. What did I just do there? Yeah, and I want to go to Postgres. There we are. So with Postgres, we get kind of a standard set of images. I'm just going to grab the latest release version of Postgres, the version 11. I haven't played enough with it anyways. I think most of my production stuff is still back on 10. Let's see. Yeah, I noticed there's an Alpine variant that it was, hey, let's try the Alpine. Part of me is like, try the Alpine, do it. Maybe I'll just do it. Okay. So this is the Docker image I'm going to use for Hasura. This is the Docker image I'm going to use for Postgres. And maybe in the beginning, let's just get those two things up and talking to each other. Seems like a simple thing. My favorite local thing, and maybe I've just been doing this for too long. What do the cool kids use for this these days? I'll just pull it up with Docker Compose and see how that goes. But I recognize that this is maybe an opportunity for play with some other orchestration technologies, something that's a little bit more production compatible. Okay, so let's see. Let's start. Do I have an editor running? I do not. Let's start up some editing goodness in here. Yeah, not from there. Don't give it away. Hang on, but why? Why are you holding? Oh, because everything changed on disk, and Visual Studio's or VS Code is trying to get real smart about remembering what I was up to. Oh, you didn't see any of that. Really, we are indeed starting fresh from an empty checkout. From a clone of the repo, this is what you get. I showed you that Docker file, which serves up the realtime-poll example application, and it's just a Docker file. It doesn't help you boot up any of the other stuff. So let's build out a Docker Compose, and let's see. So versions, this stuff is always moving forward. The last thing I was looking at was a 3.6 example of this. When you go looking for these kinds of things, with the technology that's been around as Docker, you get, you look at posts that's 3 years old and they're using an older version of schema, and then you're like pulling your hair out trying to figure out why doesn't this YAML work, and oh, it's because a key changed and you didn't realize that you have to do it a new way or an old way. So I usually end up investing a bunch of time into figuring out, well, what's modern Docker Compose going to do? And what is the version of Docker Compose these days? I'm not sure. or at least this schema. So I'm going to want two main things in the services. Postgres is going to back the whole thing, and we're going to just use the Postgres latest Docker image for that. Probably in production style environments, I might lock this down to a major version, but I'm mostly playing here. Although I'm playing to be able to put this out somewhere and hammer the heck out of it. So the image, when I configure the Docker the Postgres this way, I really like to still stay in the habit. Stay in the habit of defining things like the Postgres password. Give it a dummy thing. So when you specify that, when Postgres image boots and it sees that you have no PG data directory, it will initialize, it'll do the initdb thing, and set up that instance with this default password. And let's see, this seems to be a thing we put in. One day I'll research this and figure out what are the options for this restart parameter. And then the other thing is I like to say, let's keep the DB data directory on my host machine. Because if I destroy this image and I boot it up again here, then I would really like to not have to recreate that database all over again and stuff like that. So now that I have a Postgres service, or I ought to have a Postgres service, I can verify that. I can pop over here and I can say Docker compose up. Let's watch this. Invalid because type is a required property. Oh, see, here I am improvising with that data. Oh, hang on. I need to declare it. Let's declare the data folder, shall we? Oh, hang on, that wasn't it. There's nothing to build. I'm just saying images here. Type is required property. Is volume a subkey of services? No. That was root. Well, this is interesting. I'll go to my favorite developer tool, Google. Yeah, no, how about we restrain that? Huh. Come on, other people have hit this. Go away. All right, I've got myself into trouble there. If I weren't trying to do this, trying to put the data on the host, You know what? Hold on. Let me do a thing. Oh, I'm not in Bash. You know what? I don't know a clean way to do this on Windows. Well, obviously I'm on Windows, but I don't know a clean way to do this in PowerShell. Maybe somebody else does. But I've done this kind of thing in Bash a lot, where you know, I don't. Oh, I even have a running image. Well, that's super handy. So I want to remove all of the things out there. Yeah, so let's stop what's out there. And let's remove all of those machine images. Actually, let's actually get rid of the images too. May as well just download things again. And Docker images. Yeah. I haven't cleaned up my machine in a little while, huh? Should have done this before I got on the air. All right. Docker images. I still got a couple in there. Not quite sure. I don't have containers. Still have 2 images. What's the flag on that? -F? Huh. They're gone now. All right. So if you're not familiar with the bash syntax, this is basically just running this command in here and providing it as an argument to the Docker RMI. So where I would normally type each of the hashes individually, well, I would never do that. But you know, I'm just using a little bit of bash magic to go and query what containers I got up, what are the images do I have stored on my machine, and then just get rid of them all. So my machine's blank. And now if I let me get out of this now. Oops. Now if I docker compose up, it'll do the clean thing now. So hey, I got nothing. I'm gonna go get the stuff I need from the internet, and off it goes. Stuff's pretty thin. It doesn't take long. And if I just keep babbling on, it'll be done by the time I'm finished talking. Oh boy, I gotta get my head out of the way. Okay, there we are. So Postgres is there, it's initializing itself. Now, because I didn't specify the data volume, it's ended up using the Docker images file system to hold the PG data folder. Not really what I want. I'm gonna quick poll. Solve this now, solve this later. Let's solve it now. Now it is. So let's see. I didn't get much from a Google search on that, eh? So let's see, Docker compose, we're trying to set up volumes, and what is the current reference? Oh, apparently we're up at 3.7 now. volumes. Let's see what we got here. So I declare the volume. Oh, hang on. Did I have a space in that? Is that what I had wrong? No way. What? Oh, the simplest things, huh? Okay, that may just be fine now. If I stop you and boot you up again, you're now going to mask the local file system with that volume I gave it, and ta-da, we're good. Okay, so because I specified the Postgres password, this is my password for the root account on the Postgres, or the Postgres account on the Postgres Docker image. Oh, I never really use it. They use root, right? This stuff's awesome. It's like, hey, I think I know all the things. Oh, wait, now I have to demo it, and I realize that I don't know all the things. Password. So, yeah, I think it's the Postgres user. It's not the only way to specify credentials, which is kind of nice. Super user password, and the super user account is what? Root? Postgres? I bet it's just Postgres. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Docker image runs Postgres in a jailed environment, so I say jailed. Sorry, that's probably a BSD more than a Linux term, but an isolated environment running as the Postgres user rather than the root user in the Docker image, which again I like. Okay, we're good. So we got a Postgres image. It's running from a volume that ought to be sitting where? Where does it keep it by default? I'll explain that another time. The second thing, stay on target. Let's see, second service. I need a, I don't have an instance of the Hasura, so just call it Hasura. Sounds like a thing. The Docker image for that is going to be the Hasura org. It's the GraphQL engine, and I'm just going to use the latest version of this, just like I use the latest version of Postgres. And I would probably lock it down if I was actually doing this in a more production-like environment. So it's going to want, Hasura's got a management UI, which is super handy. It lets you noodle with the schema in your database and create tables and do all the things that you might want to do. And then right off the bat, you can start hammering it with GraphQL mutations and queries, and it just all works. Not even serverless. Okay, so ports. So by default on the machine and the Docker image, it boots up on 88. And I'm just going to map 8080 to my machine's 8080. Because when I run, when I ran the Docker, the realtime-poll app that boots up with Webpack and launches that React app, then it's by default runs on port 3000. So I'll use 8080 for the Hasura instance, and restart all the time. Hey, I got the doc open. I should read what that means. No, always on failure unless stopped. All right. That's always good to know. Well, always sounds pretty fitting for my environment. Yeah. There's nothing stored on the Hasura Docker image. It stores anything that it needs, I think, in a couple of specialized tables in the Postgres instance that you give it access to. And I think it keeps the image clean. So I don't have to layer, I don't have to have a Docker file, I don't have to layer anything on top of it. I just use it from this, but just like Postgres. So let's see, restart always, because I always do the thing. Now, this is going to use two environment variables. The first one is Hasura GraphQL database URL, and this is the connection string to get into the Postgres database. Now, we're going to use the appropriate protocol. The username we're going to connect in was the Postgres account. That's the default account. We're going to need the password that we used for that account. I called the image the machine, the service. Gotta use the right terminology. I called the service Postgres. So this is going to be known as the Postgres system. And I probably don't have to specify the port number for Postgres, but I'm just going to leave that the way it is. And I'll just use the default database for now. My next use case is to actually set this up in on an AWS RDS instance. And because of the way Amazon configured security in Postgres and RDS, you gotta tweak a couple of things and deploy a little bit differently. But because I'm just using the Docker images, I'm able to abuse some of the defaults here, like using the default Postgres database. Okay, the other thing I want to say, and just so that folks know how to do this when you try to go a little further beyond the toy, just like I was specifying like an actual Postgres password, because if you go beyond the toy and you actually have a Postgres image up there and you're not using RDS, you want to have a password. So in this case, I also want a secret access key for Hasura. So GraphQL access key, and this will be our super secret Hasura password. Sure, it's a plan. So this should be giving me all that I need to boot up Hasura and Postgres behind it and get a running environment. Let's see if it works. Let me pull up Docker. It's got to download the Docker image for Hasura and invalid database URL. Isn't that interesting? Didn't I specify? GraphQL database URL. Environment. I spelled it correctly. Postgres protocol, Postgres username, super secret Postgres password, the Postgres host named after the service, port 5432. Oh, and what happened to the database name? Stop you. There we go. Pull you up one more time. Postgres launch. I found this before. Hasura is quiet when it comes up. It doesn't really log much. But if I go to my localhost 8080, resource does not exist. So these are messages from Hasura. 404s. Huh. I got a redirect there at some point, I thought. Yeah, I don't think it's set up properly here. I'm getting a response from whatever server the Hasura image is running, but it's not really helping me here. Let's think about this a moment. All my files are saved. I look good. Now, the other thing that you would typically do here, and I think this is just for migrations, Hasura's got a migrations mechanism for database migrations where you can collect changes to the schema and execute it with the Hasura command line. And I don't think config YAML is used for any more than that. And I was kind of using this in isolation to see if I could prove that out. But I get a weird error here, and I'm not sure why. Well, hang on, what are you up to? Postgres error. Database system starting up. Aren't you interesting? Wonder what's up with that. This error looks remarkably like this. And was thrown right away. So this was Postgres error, connection error, but this is code not found. What did we have? See, last time I ran the migrations pretty early. This is setting up some baseline database things, function, putting in the PG Crypto extension. This is pretty core. If you don't have PG Crypto, this stuff ain't gonna go. It uses PG Crypto to do the UUIDs for objects. Tables to do with the real-time polling app. Yeah, it doesn't look very specific too much. And this is just inserting some simple data. Well, just because I haven't noticed it doesn't mean that it also doesn't do something special. Because the migrations command line operation might create some things. I did notice in Hasura when you have, so when they go back to the main Hasura page, and okay, further back, please. When you're in the docs for Hasura and you're looking at, because I was noodling through the AWS stuff, when you're looking through the, where was it? I think it was deploying Postgres permissions. So as HDB catalog and HDB views, these things are schemas that probably get set up by something. All right, let's try a thing. Just for fun, I'm going to go and configure the endpoint for Hasura so that the Hasura command line that I will run on Windows can talk to the Hasura Docker image that I'm executing as part of this. And so for that, I have to tell it that it can reach the Docker image at localhost 8080. And the other thing that I need to tell it, because I set up, I'm trying to set up an access key for Hasura with that super secret Hasura password. I was going to drop that in here as well. Notice that the example config YAML they gave you didn't really give you much of a hint as to put in here for authentication. I had to dig a bit across the documentation to see that. And now, if I go into, I expect I will have to leave it running. So I'm going to stop you. Come on, go. Pull you up again. Because why not? Pull up another PowerShell. Go out to, let's see. It was community, examples, realtime-poll, and Hasura. This is where the migrations are. So there's the config YAML I just configured, and I think it was Hasura migrate. Apply. Migrations applied. So we'll see if the migrate command for Hasura initialized some of that Postgres schema for us. So let's see, what was the output here? I did a bunch of things. And now if I go to try to pull up the Hasura console, I'm still getting the same message. I miss a thing. What thing would I be missing? Let me flip over to here. I'm obviously not doing the one-click Heroku deployment. And that pretty much is where that stops. Let's look at using Docker example. I did some reading around here. the Docker compose file that they set you up with is pretty straightforward, but it does most of the things that I was doing there, but it doesn't set up the password for Postgres. And I think that was a bit, oh, hey, look at you. I didn't tell it to turn the console on. Let's do that thing. Let's totally do that thing. Hasura GraphQL enable console. That looks magical. Back out to my Docker compose. Back out to my environment variables. Set you up. And shut you down. Give you a minute. Pull you back up again. Postgres is up. Hey, look, we have a UI. So I didn't probably need to do the migrations. So that's just fine. I would have been moving on to do them anyways. Of course, I haven't proved that out, but I am still running on that assumption. I got my super secret Hasura access key, and this is the Hasura UI, the console UI, which gives you a little bit of hint as to how to authenticate. And you can add some things through UI here. It gives you the GraphQL user interface, so you can explore what's in the schema. And the the schema that I loaded in with those migrations is what we're looking at here. Like, this is a option table that it set up so that we can query. If I look in so this was generated by GraphQL. There's or GraphQL's introspection into the what's going on there. This allows us to go and directly look at some of the data tables. So you can see we have an option table, and it's got all these things. And if I go to GraphQL and I say, hey, you know what? Let's query. How do we do this? Option, and I want the ID and the what? The what was it? Text? Text, yeah. I love the hints. It's such a rich UI. All right, let's execute you. And of course, now the GraphQL response shows me that data that happens to sit in that Postgres table. Super cool. I did nothing. Okay. The remote schemas is a way for you to hook in other schemas. So if you have business logic that you've buried into something else, and I'd love to explore this at some point soon. For me, I've got some specialized mutations around like authentication and stuff that I use on some of my closed source projects, and I would bridge out to those and then come back to here for just the regular CRUD operations, which is kind of interesting. All right, so you look good. So now that the environment is up and running with Postgres and Hasura, let's get the polling app up. Let's see what we need to do for that. So the main thing there, because it's an Apollo app, let's see, So because it's an Apollo app, and they've wrapped this up nicely, it's been a while since I was kicking around in the Webpack-y kind of world. So Webpack has, there's been a lot of wrappers around things and stuff like that. The React scripts is some wrappers that the React community has provided. I've never used these things before. They were really nifty. You can see that our Node scripts are delegating to the React scripts for starting the server and doing build. And you know, I like the server because it's got live reload in it, so you can just pull this up. So clearly, all I have to do is npm start this thing, and it ought to do all the things I want. Let's test that theory. Oh, there's one more thing though. In the source for the React app, there is this Apollo configuration, and this informs the React app how to communicate with the GraphQL server. So I had to learn a couple of things in here because remember I put in that authentication information, and so I kind of need that. So I'm gonna pop out here, and I'm just gonna really quickly start with in the root of the realtime-poll app. I'm gonna run an npm install to get those modules in place. In here, I think the main thing is, you know, this GraphQL engine hostname is, you know, I'm not going to be using the same, well, I'm using the same host, but I'm using a different port. And the live server, like the, you know, when I run npm start on this application on my laptop, not in a Docker image, localhost will, you know, it's going to boot that up on port 3000, and Hasura is on port 8080. So I need to say, you know, this is going to be still on localhost, but please go to port 8080 to try and reach the GraphQL server. And then the URLs, this is, I guess they're still tinkering at an alpha release for the Hasura. I'm not sure about this. You know, version numbering in the open source community is a little weird. So when I get a little closer and more familiar with the Hasura project, I'm sure I'll have far more idea and opinion on what, you know, what's safe and not safe in, you know, whatever versions of Hasura there are. So I'm not going to worry too much about this stuff. This is, I think, the path that it was all using. I think there was, yeah, this is given to you here. This is the place to reach the GraphQL actual instance. So I got the localhost 8080, and this is going to append on the protocol that I'm using, v1 alpha 1 GraphQL. So that should build those linkages, but what it is not going to include is the authentication with the access key that I've told Hasura to set up. So there are two links that this GraphQL client needs, because it's a real-time poll. It's got a couple of, well, it's got a mutation or a couple of mutations to create a user and to register a vote. But the big thing about it that I think folks will find cool is it's got a subscription to a query to look at all poll results in real time. So as a result, there's both an HTTP link as well as the WebSocket link defined here. And they're each going to authenticate differently. So the HTTP link is probably the one that folks will be most familiar with configuring something like this, and you know, this is pretty intuitive. You're going to add a headers key to this hash, and you're going to say the header that it wants to use is this Hasura access key. So Hasura access key, and I make sure I spell that right. And you know, it's going to have a value that I defined here. I'm going to make sure I'm using that correct key. And that'll set up the HTTP linkages. So if I start this right now, you're going to see an interesting thing that I started with. because configuring the WebSocket link is a little less intuitive. So now you can see the Node live server environment set up. Webpack has run and packed up this this React application in here. All these files of the React application. And that's all gotten packed up and delivered out to my browser for this real-time poll thing. And, you know, I got this big error on the right-hand side because my WebSocket authentication is not configured. So I can, like, do things in here and register a vote. And the regular GraphQL HTTP link's fine. So I'm almost there. So I'm going to leverage the fact that this is a live server. So when I make changes into the JavaScript now, it'll live reload that browse page. And I can say, hey, let's configure the WS link. And in here, this is something that fits inside of options. I did a bit of digging to find the happy way to do this. There's a connection params key that you can put into the options key, and in here you can just specify the same headers. So I'm gonna copy you, put you up here. If I was smarter, I might try to make that into a variable and eliminate that duplication, but I don't. Not gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna. Why not? Headers. Let's do the good thing. Don't be lazy. Or be lazy, as the case may be. So that's the structure I want to use for headers. Let's just use those headers, and same thing here. Let's just use those headers. So, all right. I will be lazy. No problem. What's wrong with you? Something isn't happy. I have a constant. I'm declaring it. I got a thing, and it's claiming. The parser's claiming I have a JavaScript error here. What would that be? It's not going to complain about that. Of course not. I don't know. Well, our page is working. So apparently Visual Studio Code is having a confused moment. Expression. Oh, it thinks this is a TypeScript file? Yeah, I don't think so. You know what? This is probably trying to lint or something with the wrong kind of lint configuration. I didn't think I had a TSLint plugin in here or anything. I do have ESLint set up, but I don't know. If I disable you and go back, oh, I have to reload, of course. And of course, everything's fine now. Yeah, I should have initialized a sane ESLint configuration file in here, but I'm not going to worry about that. So really, you can see the poll is active. If I vote for Ember, now let's vote for View. If I vote for View, then you can see 3 goes to a 4. I'll vote again, and 4 goes to a 5. Now that's a live reload, or not a live reload. That's a GraphQL subscription. So there's a trigger inside the database that is getting That's well, I'm not strictly sure the internal mechanism across the Postgres link that Hasura is using in order to get the changes from the Postgres tables. But they are there, and it's getting that across the WebSocket. Really, at its core, this is, and for fun, these are the GraphQL queries and rotations and subscriptions that it's got doing. So you can see the subscription for the results and the number of online users is another subscription. So as other people visit this page, that will count the new user calls, which is kind of the first entry to the page. And you can see some of that stuff in here as you explore how the React app is set up. You know, it's got a little bit of initialization, boots up on a root element, which is defined in here. Where's root? There's root. So the React app mounts here, and then the it's looking for the app component, which is here, and so it does things. So inside here, there's the Apollo provider, which is, I guess, it contributed. Not sure where that. Fully lives. What defines that element for React? There's a lot of stuff in here. Gotta pick this apart. I haven't done a lot inside React. I've done toy projects. Nothing particularly large, and I'm kind of itching to play more with it. There's a current client of mine is using ClojureScript and Reagent, which is super cool. But that usage is kind of giving me the itch to do a little further into it. So part of the other motivation for me going and exploring Hasura is, if I'm going to tinker with React, then I'm gonna do something else cool, because tinkering with React seems pretty tame and boring. So I'm going to spice it up a little by doing some subscriptions and playing with Hasura at the same time. So I think I'm going to pretty much call this a stream. We've been going for oh hey, I'm a visitor. It is going well. How are you? I don't know how to pronounce your handle, but that is awesome. I think this person is a person that I started following because she is doing some really nifty things. She's doing the Advent of Code challenge, and I've been kind of following along, and it's been kind of a lot of fun. So we are slowly building this community on Twitch of folks who are coding, and gaming's fun too, but well, I don't know. To weird people like me, maybe this is gaming too. So let's quickly recap things that I went through on today's stream. I have, let's see. I started building out this Docker Compose because I wanted to take a baseline unmodified Docker image for Postgres and get that booted up with some local data storage, and then a generic unmodified Hasura image, and stuff that on top of the Postgres instance. I'm initializing Postgres with a password, and of course my database URL is using, I'm abusing the default Postgres database that comes with the Postgres user, I'm plugging in the super secret Postgres password that I defined up here to initialize Postgres with. This Postgres host is the name of the service host, so Docker sets up that linkage for you, or Docker Compose. And I'm booting up the Hasura console on 8080, asking it, yes, please give me a console, and then setting up the GraphQL access key so that I've got a little bit of authentication coming in. So streaming while coding kind of forces you to progress. Yes, indeed it does. Oh my gosh. I love it. Yeah, I love it. I don't know. Like I say, maybe I'm weird, but this is fun. And then the community building. I'm so excited that we have some folks that are kind of jumping into this, and hey, I met a new person and she's cool too. So it's great. Anyways, Docker Compose I got going. I had to, in order to run the polling app, you have to run the migrations using the Hasura migrations mechanism. And the migrations are stored in the Hasura folder. You have to configure the config.yaml in order to reference the Hasura. So I had to add the access key that I configured in the Docker Compose. And I had to modify the localhost to 8080, 8080 being the port that I asked it to expose in the Docker Compose. And then I was able to run the migrations. Hasura has a command line thing that helps you out with some stuff. Is there a quick link to it on here? I know I found a quick link to it. They really are trying to provide an easy onboarding for people with these, one-click Heroku thing and that. But that's not who I am. I like to, I was the kid that took apart all their toys because I wanted to see how they worked. Much to the horror of my parents. Let's see. Yeah, client-side tooling, was that where I found it? Yeah, no, that's not it. There's a link. I promise you, there's a link. I probably did find it on the Hasura site somewhere in here. Might have been in the docs. Anyways, I feel like I'm getting lost here. Hey, maybe in getting started. Yeah, I don't see it here either. Docker Compose from the Hasura GraphQL engine. That's fine, we did all that. Open the Hasura console. Yeah, I'm still not finding the Hasura command line. Oh, here. Hasura CLI. I suppose I should just read what's on my screen. Here we go. The Heroku CLI, or Heroku. Hasura CLI command line, the commands on it, installing it, and somewhere errors the link that I found. The link to the Hasura 64-bit Windows installer. The Hasura command line does some stuff for you. I'm going to open a new PowerShell or quit the... I'm going to quit the live share, or the live server. Hasura, and you can see these are the things that it will do for you. So you can do a bunch of stuff for the migrations. Manage the Hasura GraphQL engine metadata. Oh, that's cool. That's the stuff found in those two tables that you have to... The migration probably set that up for us. Or maybe the console did. It's a good question. Once I told it to give me a console, it might well have put those things into the Postgres schema for us. So that's a question for me for a future exploration. Did the migration put in those metadata schemas, or did enabling the console do that? Because you saw the errors that we got earlier in the stream. It sure didn't have that stuff set up to begin with. And a login, log out from Hasura.io. I guess the only reason I would probably use this is the migrations, although maybe we'll play with examples sometime. And then the final linkage, once the Docker Compose was built, the config YAML so that we could run migrations, which executed these SQL scripts that basically populated the real-time-poll application tables and data into the Postgres database. Once I did those things, the third and final thing was configuring the Apollo client to be able to connect to GraphQL. And that was a matter of setting the hostname and port. I validated this path in the Hasura UI, which is here. And I verified the header key that it wanted me to use, and migrated over that super secret Hasura password from the Docker Compose file. And then I had to configure the headers to go both into the connection parameters of the WebSocket link, as well as the headers for the HTTP link, so that both the GraphQL subscriptions as well as the queries and mutations would both authenticate with the Hasura server or GraphQL instance. And that was it. At the end of it all, we had a happy, once I ran npm start, we had a happy live polling example. I remembered my number of votes. Who shall we act? Oh, let's toss in some votes for React. Overload that, click a little. All right. So Hasura automatically generates the GraphQL schema which wraps your tables. Yeah, well, yeah. So the server side of the GraphQL, and this was really fun to explore in the console for Hasura. GraphQL is a project that I've seen in other places. I'm using GraphQL, for example, on top of Rails in one of the projects that I've been playing with GraphQL on, and it's built also into the Hasura wrapper for the Postgres backing. And it's really nifty. It gives you a bit of exploration. GraphQL being both kind of being a bit of a contract, defining the GraphQL interactions. It was really nice to see. I spent some time in Swagger and stuff like that, and it's really nice to see the same formality of definition of how to do these things, and it's all established automatically by inspecting the Postgres schema itself and generating these things that we can do inside GraphQL on online users, coming directly from the online users table that was created with the not public, the migrations, please. It up, I think that's online users. Yeah. Oh, it's online users is a view. So really nifty thing. Yeah, really nifty thing. Oh, of course, that's why it's italicized. The poll results, I guess, is also a view. Yeah, that's going to pull together votes. There's the view. Does the things. That's really, really nifty. I love this stuff. It's cool. Yeah. So hopefully that's not too painful a path. That if you kind of follow along with the things I did, I found that I got stuck in some of those extra configuration options because maybe I'm a little OCD and overly pedantic on wanting to set passwords and things like that. So the definition of this stuff I tend to stress on. But I'm glad that I did and I got it all worked out because I'm pretty close now to actually trying a couple sample wrappers for some of my closed source projects. It's going to be fun. And on that note, it's 9:45. I have an early morning. I'm going to call it a night. Thank you, my new friend, for joining me. It's awesome. I so often am streaming, wishing for engagement, and I will probably see you on your stream at some point. I've had a hard time catching you live. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm probably going to do one more stream, maybe one or two more streams this week. I don't know. I'm really keen on playing with things. So, and then I'm heading home for a bit. So I'm going to be home over Christmas. And so I'm going to be working on, again, getting my live streaming set up at home, where I've got less space than when I'm on the road, and I got kind of a whole room to myself at home with the dog and the cats and the family, and we're kind of, and my studio's a little messy. So I'm going to get what I can put in place and get on the streaming thing, because I want to do some more over Christmas. And I will see you on a future stream. Oh, my package lock is getting ignored. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I see that practice sometimes, and it's like, well, doesn't that defeat the purpose of the package lock? I'm not a big fan of that practice, eh? But if you're playing and you don't care quite so much, sure, maybe. But maybe the same instinct in me that forces me to maybe put set the passwords and things for my Docker images is the same kind of instinct that pushes me on. Don't ignore this. If you're not familiar with the package lock, when you're doing development, I was so happy when they put this mechanism in place. Yeah, that's definitely incorrect. Yeah, if it's a public package, yeah. So in other managed dependency systems, I very much depended on this mechanism to keep my project stable because the world changes all the time. And if one of these things changes and I don't have the version reference locked down hard enough, then I could break my application and then sit there walking across my dependency tree looking for what broke me. And that's just a time sink when you're trying to get work done. So yeah, good catch on that. I think it's that's a thing to watch for. I don't think I would take it and use this code as an example, but I like to be able to call it out on a stream like this, because I don't know that folks are really aware of the little gotchas like that. So yeah, awesome. Thank you. I have to call it a night though. I gotta go. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next time, and until then, have fun coding. Bye.